Hi, listeners. It's podcast time. Daria and Ivy are back. Not so giant women. Guess what we're doing? It's time to dive into Sworn to the Sword.
Yeah, it was... The title makes me immediately recall Stephen the Sword Fighter, but
yes.
I was about to wonder, is Stephen going to get sworn to the sword? But of course, he didn't actually get any sword fighting done in that except for screwing around with a mop.
Exactly, and that was not exactly a pointy object.
Yeah, that might have put him off the idea.
Yeah.
Though Connie's got a sword.
Yeah, now that we've seen that extended opening thing, she's running around with Rose's sword.
Just slung over her shoulder because, safety.
Yeah, better not let her mom see that.
Oh, yeah. So you could say with that huge sword on top of her, she hits herself under the knife.
Oh, no. I was not expecting puns this early in the episode before we started.
Well, let's see if they bring any to us.
Yeah. All right.
We are the crystal gems. We'll always
New title
stay
sequence?
together.
Figured it was a fake guess.
Yes. Excited. I can't wait for the midair and underwater dueling exercises. It's going to be boodles of fun.
If I could begin to be half of what you think.
All right. Many feels this week. Oh.
Goodness. That is a whammy.
Yeah. Well, we open on Stephen and Connie singing and playing their instruments about jam up on the clothesline hand. I actually thought they were saying gem, not jam at first, but no, they are talking jam, conserve, squished up fruit.
Yeah. Quite a difference.
Yeah, which did make all this people talking about putting fruits in jams a bit confusing until I worked out what was going on. Anyway, as they get down to eating their, looks like scones and jam, some seagulls come along and try to take it from them, but Connie wards them off with the bow from her violin and a bit sword-like. So Stephen has an idea and asks Pearl to train Connie in the art of sword fighting, which once Pearl's buttons have been correctly pushed, she is incredibly flattered and takes them to the Sky Arena, which is where the training in Stephen the Sword Fighter took place. And in fact, just like back then, we have a hollow pearl, though its lethality sensor seems to have been turned down a bit at least. Connie wants to be able to fight alongside Stephen, and we get a musical number which has the theme of do it for him or do it for her, because Pearl keeps flashing back to her antics with Rose back in their battles. And as training gets more and more intense, Connie becomes more skilled, but also Pearl starts telling her that she's nothing and Stephen is the only one that matters because she's protecting him. Well, she says she's his liege. Hang on. She says he's her liege, and over the enthusiasm for getting Connie the knight to defend Stephen the liege, she sort of says that Connie should pretty much be prepared to give herself up entirely for the very thought of Stephen, and it's all very demeaning. Or so Stephen thinks, and he's not wrong on this one. A quick conversation with Garnet and Amethyst, in which apparently Garnet has told some joke we'll never get to hear, and Stephen realizes how far things have got, pads back to the Sky Arena, and finds himself in the middle of a very intense training simulation session with mists and fogs and hollow pearls and everything. He convinces Connie that this should be about fighting together, not her throwing away his life for him, and demonstrates this by beating back first some hollow pearls and then the actual pearl by combining his shield and bubble with Connie's sword skills. Pearl is entirely projecting her experiences of giving her all or wanting to give her all for Rose in the battles, till she eventually, in her arguing of Stephen and Connie, says, "Why won't you let me do this for you, Rose?" And everyone goes quiet for a bit. And as Pearl goes for a little sit down, Stephen asks, "Is that why you keep saying these things to Connie? Because Rose made you feel like you were nothing?" And Pearl responds that Rose made her feel like she was everything. Pearl realizes what she's been doing and realizes that the two can fight together and they will make great co-knights, and then starts dreaming up all kinds of training scenarios for them as we start out to credits.
Nice summary.
Yeah, well, the opening must have been great for you. Song and food all at once.
Exactly. We had 2 songs and multiple foods. I got to get busy on this.
Oh, yeah. But moreover, we saw some of Pearl's issues coming back to the surface.
Yeah, this is definitely a Pearl is not well episode.
Yeah. And, I mean, one of the key projection things is that she wants to give her all for Rose. She wants to do it for Rose. She wants to do it for her, as she says it in the song. But, of course, there is no Rose now. So she's projecting herself onto Connie and Rose onto Stephen. And it's not entirely a healthy way to treat Connie, made all the worse by Connie kind of entirely buying into it, whether that's enthusiasm or if she's starting to believe it or if she just figures Pearl's the teacher, so she's right. We can't be sure. Maybe all of them.
Feel like there's probably also a healthy dose of, like, Connie has read probably a lot of fantasy where there are loyal protectors and people like that who she's modeling herself after.
Oh, yeah. She's probably caught up in in kind of the dream of a pitched battle in which she defends her liege Stephen. But Stephen is right. They're all warriors this time.
Yeah, and initially when Connie said that she was interested in doing this and inspired Pearl with her speech about how she wants to help and she doesn't want to stand by, she did that with the idea that they would be partners, not that she would be first in the line of fire the way Pearl cast herself as the protector of Rose Quartz.
We could kind of see it coming that Pearl was going to snap and have that, why won't you let me do this for you, Rose, outburst.
Yeah, it's really sad to think that they must have had that conversation and that Rose must have had a similar response to Stephen saying, I'm not too important to be here. I will not stand by and just watch you kill yourself for me.
Yeah, or maybe given the energy behind Pearl's outburst, maybe they hadn't had that conversation. Pearl had been wishing ever since that they did.
That's definitely a possibility that this has been brewing. I kind of felt like it was almost flashbacky and reenactment-y versus something that she'd been holding back, but it definitely could have been either one because it's hard to know what their relationship was really like if she respected her that much that she was self-sacrificial in her, her attempts to protect her, that she would yell at her like that too.
If you'd watched this episode without knowing the backstory properly, you could also be led into thinking that all these battles and wars and stuff was where Rose died, that Pearl somehow felt responsible. That's not the case because, as far as we can tell, Pearl is as far as responsible as one can be for Rose's eventual death. But
yeah, it's true.
She could still be, if she's kind of traumatized and freaking out, she could still be looking to what she sees as a failure all that time ago, and just Rose is no longer here. So even if she's not thinking one's a consequence of the other, they're meshing together in her head, especially because if Rose no longer here, she can no longer address that failure with her. Even if there wasn't a failure, and I imagine Rose would have been the first to say there wasn't, but Pearl can get quite highly strung when it comes to this sort of thing, especially, in fact, mostly when Rose Quartz is concerned.
Yeah, and her personal experience with it kind of aside, I think that going into the mindset that it requires to try to train Connie to be what she was, even though that's not healthy for anyone and certainly not for somebody who has one life, who's a squishy organic girl who will not come back if she gets stabbed. I guess, unless Stephen licks her, but we won't go there. But
I don't know if that works. I also don't want to see the episode of Steven Universe where he licks his best friend corpse to find out if she's not come back to life.
Yeah, exactly. But although, yeah, that was interesting that when she had her hand, she looks at her hand and it's all messed up and Pearl pulls out a bandage rather than, let's just go to our healer who's sitting there and see if it works if he spits on it.
Yeah, because we've already moved into let's keep Stephen as far away from the battle as possible, which of course Stephen for once is the one aware that's been the opposite of what they've been doing for a lot of this. Granted, they do send him away for safety at the last big moment, but in this case it's almost as if they've just disqualified any combat or coping ability Stephen has. I think it's not unfair to say that when they sent him away last time, it was in a possibly misjudged but not unreasonable thought that what was coming was more than what he could handle, whereas this seems to almost reduce him to not being able to handle anything.
Yeah, it could have been partially based on the fact that he got a little triggered there when he saw the hollow pearl and he immediately made a bubble and he's just like, oh, wow, he's remembering his trauma.
It's played a bit for laughs that he's
Yeah.
like, oh, I remember what happened last time this one turned up.
Right. But then, when he said it was reflex and then he's like, you be careful and I will go over here. So he kind of like initially removed himself from the situation. But then after that, he didn't like insist on including himself. It was, initially the idea was let Connie get sword fighting lessons because she seemed interested. And Steven's the shield.
Yeah, at first there's just no need for him to butt in. He doesn't need to be in the actual training, but this isn't the same as him being excluded from any battle Connie might be in, because as she said, she wants to be there by his side. And, well, the likelihood is if she's in a big battle, it's probably going to be down to Steven's involvement.
Yeah. Yeah, and it certainly can't hurt for her to know how to fight better. So
particularly she seems to, I think Stephen's right, that she has a bit of native skill in this area to build on.
Yeah. If you go all the way back to Lion 2, she was helping him aim that sword.
And
her tennis skills.
Yeah, so not the same skill set, but shows that she's, well, good at doing stuff with something in her hand of approximately that length.
Sure. Yeah, definitely not unprecedented.
Yeah, she's young. That's a skill you can build on.
Oh, sure.
But you're right. When we saw that sort of, I suppose, illustration from Garnet and Amethyst, well, I suppose really Garnet, of Pearl charging into battle, getting poofed, to charging into battle and getting poofed over and over. And that's where you sort of go, well, yeah, Pearl can do that. Connie can do that once.
Yeah.
Exactly if Connie is determined not to have someone by her side, and particularly if the person she is not having by her side is someone with powers that protect people.
Yeah. Plus just emotionally, he doesn't want a servant. He doesn't even really want a knight exactly, because that confers some kind of status upon him. And he just wants to be jam buds. He wants to be the strawberry and the biscuit,
Well, that was a nice bit of throwing that, of course, Pearl wasn't there for the whole jam conversation. So even in the middle of her totally freaking out when they say, we're jam buds, she's like, what?
Yeah, the little like question mark face. She's like, wow. She has some good wow moments.
Yeah, I think at the start he was like, okay, knight, fighter, whatever, liege. I don't actually know what that means, so I'll just go over here.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they're kidding around.
Yeah. As time goes on and when Connie arrives, she's sort of, well, you see her go from sort of chatting a bit to Stephen, then going off to the arena to, hi, Stephen, got to go, bye.
Yeah. I mean, her teacher expects punctuality and she's like, yes, ma'am. And that's very sort of that reflex to obey people that she respects in authority is already also established with the way she calls her mother ma'am and has very strict upbringing. She's kind of used to it.
Oh, yeah. She was definitely her mother's daughter in that regard.
Yeah. It seems like they really laid the groundwork very well for her to respond to that as if it's an expression of love and trust rather than this is a teacher who's being really mean to me and I'm going to quit. She was like responding like somebody who her own family is full of tough love like that.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways, in a far more benign sense, up until now, her friendship with Stephen has had a bit of he looks up to her aspect, mostly due to her simply being a more decisive personality and more experienced in the quote-unquote real world. But it's more a matter of mutual. It's a more mutual thing. He does not actually see her as an authority, and she has no desire to be one. So I'm saying you can look up to someone in a milder, more benign way, and you can guide someone through the real world or get them back on track because you're trying to talk about a book and they've seen a shiny thing without it being so destructively negative as it starts to become with Connie and Pearl.
Exactly. And neither Connie nor Stephen is an adult, and they both see things in each other that they admire. Yeah, they definitely don't have a student or like a student teacher kind of vibe to them at all. But you definitely get this feeling like, okay, Connie is the practical one and she can sometimes give him a reality check, but he's, yeah.
So it's a much milder and nicer version of what she experiences from others. Well, from others, brackets, her mum.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that, because I think you can have that sort of just looking up at it being mutually beneficial, especially because Stephen has things he brings. And she never tells him what to do, or at least she never orders him what to do. Occasionally she tells him what to do to bring him down to earth. But yeah, if nothing else, it comes from she's also just the more sensible one.
Yeah, definitely practical person.
Which means she and Pearl were... They've got similar aspects. Unfortunately, they locked onto each other in a bad way this week.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about that a little bit, that you could definitely see the two of them matching in a lot of ways. And I wonder if this just occurred to me, that I wonder if that was part of the reason that they were both shown playing violin.
That's subtle, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like there couldn't have been plenty of other instruments that they could both have, but like there's more than a few things they have in common. And it's definitely a personality match where both of them respect structure and order. So, but yeah, then that can also be exploited or be turned in the wrong direction, like what happened with Pearl today. And I don't know, I felt like watching this, I just don't want her to be in charge of small children sometimes. I'm just like, you don't really understand how squishy and vulnerable these babies are. And you're trying to turn one into a loyal killing machine, you know? Yeah, she's stabbing robots, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, the original plan is sound. There's probably going to be a battle. Connie is showing promise in being a sword fighter. Pearl can teach sword fighting. She's tried to do so before, although she got 5 minutes into a lesson, got stabbed. So she's not got a great track record.
Yeah.
I don't want to see her Yelp review for that.
No. Well, at least these ones didn't kill anyone this time. Any of these hollow pearls. She made a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, and I think it was very much just the coming together of all the right/wrong elements that made this the problem it was. If Pearl didn't have a hang-up about Rose, if Rose hadn't been Stephen's mom, if the art hadn't been exactly the thing Pearl was channeling her hang-up about Stephen's mum through, and of course the personalities you've already covered, it just created a perfect storm to overdo things and for Pearl to eventually freak out. I mean, because we know in raw terms, we know she's been dying to teach someone something for ages.
Oh, God, you're right.
And Connie has experience of actually being a student. So if all that other business hadn't been going on, this could have been perfect.
Yeah, it could be a very good relationship, because, I mean, a lot of people who take, fighting classes and martial arts and gymnastics even, like, they need a tough, no-nonsense coach sometimes to really push them and get them to attain their potential or whatever. But if your teacher is literally a self-sacrificial, apparently pretty close to indestructible, pretty close to immortal space alien, she's probably not going to fully understand your needs and teach you all the wrong things that have built up over her long life that have made her neurotic.
Yeah, if you shift the goal from teach you to sword fight to basically teach you to die.
Yeah, and that it would not, he's more important than you. You aren't anything. You're nothing. She literally told her to repeat that.
And
that's scary.
Yeah, especially because Stephen isn't one of those chosen one has a destiny figures, even though it's a little bit framed as such. There's no in-story stuff that's saying, as a product of human and gem, Stephen is foretold to unite our peoples. So there's no dispassionate, objective reason why he's more important either. It's just Pearl's neuroses that have put him there, and it's not even really putting him there. It's putting Rose there, but she's gone, so got to move down one. I don't think it's a gem-esque. I think Stephen is Rose thing, because I think she's completely aware, unlike the Jaspers and possibly Peridot's of the universe. I just think
I agree.
A personal projection issue, and that he's the son is compounding it.
Yeah, I really think it was her frame of mind was in control, and the wrong name came out of her mouth because it's a conversation that she's either had or wanted to have about the same thing.
Yeah, I think even if there was no gem connection between Stephen and Rose, but this still could have played out that way.
Yeah, I agree.
in some ways she's a bit wrong, because you don't entirely want your soldiers to be prepared to die. You want them to, well, not so much not be prepared to die as you want to give them some survival instinct so they can keep fighting.
Yeah.
Because if she dies defending Stephen, she's not around to defend Stephen anymore.
Yeah. And it's not like he's a king that has all these subjects that are clamoring to be in his army and have the honor of dying for him or whatever. It's one person that he has a personal relationship with that he values way above what she can do for him on the battlefield.
And yeah, it moves from the, are you prepared to give up your life, to giving up your life is the actual object of the exercise. And especially, as has been pointed out, there is only one of her and she only has one life. So if we're talking about heated battles, you're going to need more than just that if we're talking a full-on everyone on the battlefield thing.
Yep.
And
exactly.
One of the things that would help if you were fighting, if the person you were protecting is fighting by your side, not just being pedestaled.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very telling that as soon as Stephen started describing what happened with Pearl trying to convince Connie to do dangerous stuff, Garnet immediately recognized the behavior and, told a war story about how sacrificial Pearl was. And that and Pearl is a very logical person most of the time. And then she says she put her over logic, over consequence, over her own life. And Pearl putting something over logic and consequence, it almost makes it seem like even if it accomplished nothing, she would rather run onto someone's blade if Rose was being threatened.
Yeah, and Rose is very much the crack in her psychological armor.
Yeah.
The kryptonite to her other thought processes.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that she has something like that she has a crack that big that keeps coming back and keeps interrupting her interactions with everybody else she knows.
And yeah, we don't know, and maybe we'll never know what Rose made of this. Maybe Rose made it. It sounds like, from what little we did here, though, that Rose made of it kind of what Stephen made of it. Of the just calm down, chill. I'm not all that. Yeah,
it does imply that she did not think herself worthy of just sitting on a throne and making her underlings fight for her. That, despite Pearl thinking she's a knight for someone more important who is on this impossibly high pedestal, Rose wanted to be on the battlefield too and was frequently targeted, probably for the same reason that Jasper wanted to change the whole mission when he found out that Rose Quartz was on Earth. So she thought that, she shows up on a battlefield and probably everyone wants to kill her.
How much of a fighter she is in that huge meringue dress.
Right. Does she have like a different outfit? I mean, in the pictures, she didn't. In the projections, she didn't. It was interesting to suddenly get that flashback.
Definitely little hatches and little battle things come out of it from that dress.
I would love to see Rose in like a battle suit, though. Be very interesting.
I can imagine her in some of those old-timey armors like some people put on artistic interpretations of people like Boudica and stuff.
Or like in her cave that she had like a bunch of armor in there. I wonder if she ever wore any of it. Not sure if any of it would have fit her.
Yeah, and there is that whole, armor's clothing after all. Now we've got gems and clothing is always an interesting place to go.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be one point where it definitely makes sense to have separate garments if the idea is to protect you from harm. You wouldn't want just an extension of yourself. That would miss the point.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a gem and you're in battle, you should probably construct some kind of armor that covers up wherever your stone is. Oh, but there's Rose Quartz walking around with a nice little star framing her belly button.
Yeah, and I don't know if anything could penetrate that meringue to get to her legs, but her shoulders and arms are completely uncovered too.
That's true. Yeah. She does not look dressed for battle, but, they're gems. Let me rewind my brain to the beginning of the episode to see what else I want to talk about, because I want to talk about those seagulls.
Oh, yes.
I think seagulls must be the ultimate villain of the show. It's at least the third time they've battled seagulls. What was it? We saw Frybo when we were attacking Frybo, and we saw it in Monster Buddies, and now we've seen it in this one. There's these asshole seagulls all the time.
Well, anyone who's ever tried to eat on the beach knows exactly how evil they are. So,
Tell them we're not afraid of your kind.
Oh, that I just lost it.
Yeah, you were laughing.
I just thought it so hilariously over the top.
Yeah, so much drama. Connie and Jamie need to get together.
Yeah, and punctuated with wielding the bow like a sword.
Yeah. Run back to your masters. Makes me think she's been reading some high fantasy again.
Oh yeah, that was definitely contributing.
Yeah. But I loved their little time sitting on this hand. Had quite a focus on the hand and the laundry up there. At least this time they had clothespins. I noticed that. But I wonder how they got up there, though, because Connie was later kind of acting like she had never warped before when she got to warp to the ancient sky arena. And I would think that's how they get up there, because it looks like there's a warp pad in that hand. But, like, how did they get up there otherwise, right?
Unless they've both got really good balance, which is not something I would immediately volunteer to be so about Steven Universe.
Yeah. They could just get Amethyst to turn into Dogcopter and fly them up there.
Ah, there we go. Accept that one.
We've seen her do that. But yeah, I kind of would have assumed that they just used the warp pad because Steven could do that. But then, Connie was definitely acting like this was the first time that she warped, and she was getting really excited and giddy about that whole experience.
Oh yeah, warping makes Connie high. What's that about?
Yeah, she got really excited, and she was like floating weirdly differently than Steven, which kind of makes you think back to when Steven used to have that issue. He would be sort of levitating in the stream in an uncomfortable way and he'd fall. And this time, it's not him, it's her. It takes some getting used to. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It does leave the question about the laundry hand.
Yeah. Maybe we can just hand wave it.
Bow.
We didn't really get any puns, so, we have to provide them. But yeah, they go to this. Yeah, what'd you think of that design of the sky arena there? It's kind of a little better look at it than we had.
Yeah, we didn't sort of see that foyer bit before. We just
outside.
We just kind of went straight there.
Yeah. But you know what? Like, I know that there's a significant portion of fans that believe that there are two different places, that we haven't been here before. But I think the issue is, and I forget where I read this or heard this, but they redesigned some of the backgrounds. They refined some of them and expanded some of them. And I'm pretty sure they just made some cosmetic changes and expansions to the original arena. It's not a different place, but there are some fans who thinks it's a different place. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not confirmed either way, but it looks so much the same. They're going there for the same purpose.
Yep.
I guess we didn't see them warp there last time. They were just kind of there, so that's really not one way or the other.
Right, and we didn't see them come in the front or anything. Yeah.
So yeah, it could be another place, but I'm just not sure why it would be.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there would be more than one place that she would demonstrate sword stuff and that it would look very similar to another one. But I'm almost sure that in the second half of the first season, or maybe later after that, I don't know, that there was some explicit refining of some of the backgrounds and some of the settings. But I would have to look up where I saw that.
Yeah, but if you're going to start worrying about those artistic aspects, you would also, I suppose, need to come up with explanations as to, why Steven is short and with a protruding face sometimes, and slightly leaner with a smoother face than some others.
It's true. Yeah, but I think that the enough details, I think, are different between the one we saw in Steven the Swordfighter and the one we saw here, that people concluded they were different places. And I guess one was called a cloud arena and the other was, she called it a ancient sky arena or something. So people were kind of nitpicking on that. But I mean, it seems to me like they're the same place. And I don't see a reason why they can't just kind of retcon a little and update and say, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like now. We just made it a little better.
That could just be like some people say football pitch and some people say football field.
Yeah, there you go. Could be. So, yeah, it looks like a pretty strange place. It's somewhere in the clouds and it's broken looking. Weird.
Yeah, they said battles had happened there, so maybe it was the worse for wear because of it.
That's true. And Pearl said something very interesting there. She said it was here that I first became familiar with the human concept of being a knight. I think that's how she said it. And that to me made the timeline not make sense.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have to bend things a bit, but it really has her finding out about knights long after this was something she could be. Because, yeah, even the most creative interpretation of what does she mean by knight doesn't go back the thousands upon thousands, well, maybe not thousands upon thousands, but the plural thousands of years, which is when it's supposed to be when all this happened.
Right. And timeline-wise, she's definitely referred to the war as being more than 5,000 years ago.
Yeah. So, I mean...
medieval knights were not around 5,000 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, you could push that back as far as maybe like 8th century, but really the war and stuff would have been long over by what we've been told so far. We haven't been given the impression that the war on Earth, at least, lasted for thousands and thousands of years itself.
Right.
And even so, that would still mean she found out about the knight thing quite late in the picture after she'd been... Maybe she found out about knights later and thought, oh, that's what I've been doing. Earth has a word for it.
That's the only way that I can make it make sense, honestly, Daria, because that's almost exactly what I was thinking. It's such a weird way to say it, too. It was here that I became familiar with the human concept of being a knight. It wasn't, I became a knight here. Like, why were you in this arena? Were you doing this with some other human? Or, I don't know, did you take one of Rose's boyfriends here and cut his head off? Like, what happened?
Did there used to be a library there?
Right. So, I mean, the wording was a little weird, but I'm just thinking maybe there was some reason why. Maybe it had something to do with the statues that they had, like almost like these statues were there showing each like champions or something, or stood for something. And maybe somebody recognized them and said it was this a knight. She got an explanation. Who knows? I mean... yeah, and some of that armor looked like suits of armor too. So who knows? Yeah,
it's a bit of what we touched on an episode or 3 back of interjecting your human concept of where it's not really necessary. I think the cramming in knights are a human thing, which crunkles up the time scale, is what does it. If she just said something like, I wanted to be the knight that defended your mother or something like that, which is what she means, then that would have been fine, because we just go, okay, she's saying knight, whether or not that's the gem word for it as well. We know what she means. Exactly.
Yeah, there's no reason gems couldn't have had knights.
Yeah, and we've had our running gag about gems speaking English, but even if you don't like that idea, you can just say they're equivalent terms.
Exactly. They're clearly big on loyalty, and I don't know, I could see them having a code of chivalry or whatever that's very similar.
Yeah, especially someone like Rose compared to someone like Jasper, whose code is, I punch you.
Also, speaking of the timeline, that Pearl kind of dropped some specifics, some vague specifics, when she said she was only a few thousand years old when she started fighting with Rose Quartz.
So, yeah, I guess given most interpretations of few, then her age is looking at the 8,000s at least by now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is even if you conservatively estimate few as 3 and then add the gem war to that, it's like you're looking at 8,000 and then you don't know what she did before that. Like, was she born? And then, born is the wrong word, but did she start doing that? Like, I don't know. Who knows? But she's old. Good Lord.
Yeah.
She's old as hell. Like, just the whole concept, even the concept of a conscious being that old is scary.
Yeah.
She lives in Stephen's house.
Yeah, I can't remember if I've said it on the show before, but I have read, and ultimately this is speculation because as far as we know it's never really happened, that any sapient being who lived that long would just have a completely incomprehensible outlook. Which, granted, sometimes you don't know what she's on about, but that's not incomprehensible. That's just her being her.
Right.
Of course, then you also get into yes, but we need to be able to relate to these characters on some levels. Or the people who speculate that are just plain wrong. Look, it's on TV, it must be true.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was a little bit of a lore drop there, I guess. We still don't know. And that was sort of played for laughs, too. Like, I was only a few thousand years old. And nobody says anything. No one's just like, how friggin' old are you, lady?
Yeah, that
Probably wouldn't answer.
Yeah, and yeah, she is one of the characters who, if you said that, you'd expect she pretty much meant it, that she wasn't just screwing around with people.
Oh, yeah. She's very literal most of the time.
Mm.
So let's see. I want to talk about Stephen's supporting Connie, making her food and trying to read that book. You kind of chuckled a little, I think, when we were looking at him reading how to talk to people.
Think of what you want to say. Say it.
Yeah, that was very cute. He's struggling to figure out how to talk to her about what he's uncomfortable about with what she's doing. Yeah, he's trying to support her, making her healthy foods, and at first she's accepting them, and as it goes on longer, you see her like kind of put the food down and go back to training.
Yeah, and I think it takes a while for him to become aware how much he, the concept, has supplanted he, the person, in their training.
Yep, 100%.
In some ways, by the point that everything breaks, Connie's just bypassing Stephen offering her food because she's off to fight for the idea of Stephen, which is becoming disconnected from the strange boy in the star shirt.
Yeah, the way she kind of says to him when she's justifying her self-sacrificial thinking, she says, like, I understand your legacy, your destiny, and none of these are things that he even wants her to be considering in their friendship. So it's very disconnected from anything that they are actually sharing, which it's bookended very well with like an opening that focuses on how close their relationship has gotten, and then at the end that's reaffirmed. I like that.
Yeah, so at the end, they've got people just chilling, sitting on incredibly high ledges again, and I just do not know how they can do that.
Yeah, that's a little scary. Maybe we just don't realize that there's a safety net about 6 feet down.
Yeah.
Somehow I think not. Not with lethal robots roaming around.
Yeah, well, at that height, it's got to be even dangerous for Pearl, surely.
Possibly. I would think so.
And it just looks like a sky arena, and it's only like a couple meters up.
Yeah, that would be funny. Yeah, I think it is what it looks like.
Yeah, I think some of the shots pretty much show it's as high as it looks.
I wonder if the air is thinner there.
Oh, that can't be helping Connie's attitude.
No. I wonder what Connie's mother thinks when she's coming home injured.
Maybe she's telling her she's having really hard training at tennis.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it seems like she must not know that she's doing this because she wouldn't approve it.
Maybe
then she's coming often, so.
Maybe she's just been lucky enough that her mother's schedule hasn't allowed her to take a proper look in the however long that training took.
It's true.
I mean, because Connie must actually be a pretty good learner on top of everything else, and Pearl a good teacher to actually get that professional sword fighting in what appears to be a fairly short space of time.
Yeah, it's one song montage, right?
Yeah.
And her mom is a doctor, so she's probably pretty busy.
Oh, there you go. Maybe Mum's got some doctor stuff around the house that she can give herself better treatment and doesn't have to look as injured.
Yeah. I guess it's just like I've seen the bandages on like her face and her arm. Like if my kid came home from that Strange Universe boy's house bandaged up, I would be investigating immediately.
Yeah.
Especially if you're Connie's mom, because she's like that. But, for all the overprotectiveness, you definitely feel like she's just kind of showing up and is able to own her own schedule. Like, so either her mom thinks she's somewhere else specifically, or they have an understanding. I don't know what it is.
Maybe she's telling her it's fencing lessons, because that'd be kind of true.
I could see her mom being on board for that. But yeah, they just don't really tell us. They just have her showing up.
Yeah, I guess there's a little bit of 11-minute show to that.
Exactly. But I feel like if Dr. Maheshwaran had one conversation with Pearl about this, she would love Pearl. She would be like, what a fantastic teacher. She will teach you discipline, blah, blah, blah. Like, she would be on board.
Oh, yeah, maybe what we missed was actually just Pearl giving a spin on it that Dr. Maheshwaran liked.
Could be. But it could also be just as much that she's scared that her baby can't handle getting into dangerous situations. So who knows? Oh, so yeah, I really liked how it ended, and that even though it's still kind of screwed up because Pearl she didn't solve her issues in one moment there, but she recognized how dedicated they were to each other because she realized they felt that for each other.
Well,
like it wasn't just one for the other.
She didn't solve her issues about Rose, but I think she at least addressed some of her issues with Connie.
I think so. Yeah.
And from the way she was getting enthusiastic at the end, sounds like Stephen may yet come to regret getting so involved in the training.
But, that was a cool thing. He used the shield and the bubble at the same time. So it seems like he would be more the protective person and Connie would be the offensive person, and they would work well together.
Well, this is the other thing, which is a gap in Pearl's logic, that Stephen is possibly literally the best one to protect himself. Maybe not he's not going to win out in every situation, but he is the guy who makes shields and impenetrable bubbles.
He's pretty safe.
So while Connie protecting him, that's great. He's just not lacking in that area at all.
Yeah. And then on top of that, he's got the healing powers. Or at least they're in there somewhere.
Yeah, so really he should be brushing up on how to protect Connie if you want to play it that way.
Yeah. One little aside is that I did really appreciate that they didn't like beat Pearl in a battle. That was nice that, she just they went up against her and then eventually she just had it and she was like, no, enough. And she just shoved them both away. Like I always hate it when an extremely accomplished warrior with something like Pearl with thousands of years of experience would be beaten by an upstart. They never should be able to beat her.
Yeah. She was back-footed a bit, I guess literally considering the craft, but that's perfectly believable, especially because she simply wasn't expecting this to happen. But
right, and teaching Connie how to do that.
Yeah, but if they'd completely floored her just with the power of friendship or something, it'd be no.
Yeah.
No, we need more than that. Knocking her back a bit, that's fine because the situation just changed on her. But yeah, right. That she showed that she can just take it up a notch and go, enough is enough.
Right. Calling time out by being like, okay, let's just jump to the part where I bested you. I shoved you to the ground.
Yeah, it just takes her a moment to reset from the Connie sparring level to throw them off.
I don't want to forget to talk about the really amusing exchange that happened with Garnet and Amethyst, who were barely in the episode, but when they were, it was pretty memorable. And Garnet called herself master of comedy.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That was perfect.
I really wanted to know what was the funniest thing she ever heard that she just told Amethyst. We'll never know.
That's the beauty of it.
Ah, come on, Garnet, tell us. She'll never tell us.
As is her deadpanning king of comedy.
Gosh, she's just so perfect. I'm not sure what was up with that line read where Amethyst was like, why are you standing there all sad like that? And she hollered it at him.
I just thought that was Amethyst just having one of her moments.
I guess so. So strange.
I was having fun laughing and now you're being sad.
Yeah. What else weird was in this episode that I forgot to talk about? Oh, it was weird that Pearl did this thing right after that when Stephen ran to the warp pad to go stop Connie from doing dangerous things. He came in just as they were starting this exercise and Pearl said, let us begin, and pulled this fog in. I guess she summoned this fog, and I don't think we've ever seen her do something like that before, but it's kind of similar to what the weird sand thing she did way back in Giant Woman, but it just seems to be these random weird things she does.
Oh, I thought that was a function of the arena rather than Pearl herself.
Might be. Don't know how much of it is under her control, whether it's sort of like a simulation or whether she just pulled clouds in.
Yeah, well, I guess I was going to say, I guess there's some reason why you go there as opposed to anywhere else, but if you have that available to you, if you've got a spare arena, why wouldn't you go there, really?
Yeah, and it's atmospheric. But
she's laying them out. She's besting me on these this week.
Yeah, I'm not usually that good at puns, so I'm gonna put this down on my calendar as a pretty awesome day that I busted them out.
Busted well.
Yeah. Let's see. So do you want to talk about music or do you have anything else content-wise?
Go to the music, of which we had 2 songs this week.
Yay. Yeah, the jam song was first. It's called the jam song.
sometimes they're not up all night naming these, are they?
No. Maybe the same philosophy goes into naming the songs as naming some of these episodes. I thought it was really cute that it was Connie's first singing. That was nice. I thought the duet was cute. Both of them playing their instruments. And
It gives the double meaning of jam.
yeah, that was cool too. Thank you for pointing out the pun. There's one sort of music nerd thing. I'm not sure if it was super obvious, but like when they were kind of taking their turns singing, a lot of times they were switching roles on their instruments. Like if they were singing, then the other person was playing the instrument to do like support for that. So it was like,
I noticed that.
yeah, I guess it's pretty common, but both people were playing instruments and both people were singing. So that was neat.
It was like tossing the singing and playing balls back and forth.
Yep. And when I was learning to play this, I realized it's the same chord progression as the Little Butler theme song.
Well, if you're onto a winner.
Yeah. An orphan boy with sass and pep got dropped off on our mansion step. Same thing as the opening of the jam song. Pretty funny.
It got stuck in their heads. They just couldn't help it.
Yeah, guess so. So, but then Connie, she's never sung on the show before, and then she gets to sing twice in one episode, and she gets to sing a duet with Dee Dee Magno-Hall, Grace Rolick, and Dee Dee.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It came out well. I liked it. I like that Connie's a competent singer, but like it's very, what do you call that? It's modest, she's not trying to wow you with her singing. She's not doing all kinds of trills and stuff. So it's good. Yeah. That's my story.
Yeah. And as ever, this also just gives us one of those Stephen and Connie messing about, having fun things, which I always like to see.
Yeah. It was really cute. Their bond is kind of reinforced by that. And it's always nice to see Connie and see that their relationship is continuing and growing. Music-wise, there was, of course, there's always background music, but most of it was reused stuff. I think they put in some stuff from the original time that they fought there, like some of the same music as the Dance of Swords, I think. But I believe there was one new one, because I've got the soundtracks now.
Ah.
And I believe there was one new one that was made new for this episode that was called Sky Arena / Let Me Do This For You. And I thought that was cool. And they incorporated some of the like melodic aspects of the background music from when Stephen and Pearl were in the episode Rose's Scabbard in the really sad scene, and the instrumental was called I'm Still Here. So they pulled some musical aspects of that and put it into that one. And it's just, that's really poignant for me, is the I'm Still Here song is put into the Sky Arena song.
Yeah, and I certainly noticed a similarity in the actual content, the actual on-screen happenings.
Yeah. And it's always, Pearl's instrument, the piano, it's always put in there with those. It's so versatile that they can use that for so many different Pearl breakdown types. But that's all I have for music. Any thoughts on those songs?
I like the way that the chorus of what I assume is called either Do It For Her or Do It For Him or both nicely incorporated Pearl's self-correction as part of the song.
Oh, yeah.
Which also meant the rhyming and rhythm could happen the right way in the right places.
It's such an excellent song, too. And it's pretty long. It tells a whole story in it.
Yeah, and story-wise lays down where this is going to go with Pearl.
Just sort of slowly starts being more alarming, more toxic as it goes on.
Because, when it starts off, it's a bit, Pearl, focus. But it escalates from there.
Yeah. From just sword fighting stances to you prepared to die.
And the whoops I referenced Rose Quartz right through to I'm starting to go into some kind of fugue state where I'm talking to her.
Yeah, she makes it very clear that she wants Connie to project onto Stephen the same way that she projected onto Rose. And they're lining that up 100% in this song. It's kind of heartbreaking because it's just such a beautiful song and it's such a toxic message. It's what her self-worth must be like, even after all these years. And one of the lines was just think about the life you'll have together after the war.
Yeah, that was one of the most pointed ones. That was when we started to leave reality a bit.
Right. Presumably they got to the end of the war and they got to have a life together, but she's still not like, okay. she's still fighting for her, and now she's dead.
Yeah, and I don't think it was quite the life together that Pearl was hoping for.
I'm certain she didn't envision all the boyfriends.
No.
That really sucks.
Yeah, and when your friend has a baby and they don't have any time for you anymore because they gave up their physical form.
Yeah, it always sucks when that happens. Wow. Oh.
As we said, that jam song also gave us some food for this week.
I love eating. Feels weird.
You're right.
We got some scones and jam.
Yeah. So everybody knows that when it comes to Steven Universe recipes, I typically will not just go to the store and buy a thing and put it on a plate and say, look, it's the recipe. I did not make my own jam for this, but I did make my own biscuits. And this was one of my earliest recipes. I think actually I made biscuits and jam as one of the things that I brought to my friend's house when I think we watched Steven Bomb 3. Biscuits and jam was, so that means it must have been sometime in 2015 or 2016, and that I was already making recipes back then. And this was an easy go-to for me because I love biscuits and I love bread, and I already had a biscuit recipe. So I decided to use one of the ones that is kind of on the drier side, because if you're going to put jam on it, then that's perfect, right? So yeah, it's pretty typical, other than maybe having a little less butter, I think, than most. But like most biscuit recipes, it's dry ingredients go together: the flour, the sugar, salt, baking powder, baking soda, I think, and cutting in butter. And then I use almond milk, but you can use regular milk or soy or whatever. And that's like really pretty much it. And my trick for making biscuits work really well to have a natural split in them is after, like, you usually at this point you're using your hands to mix it up. I roll it out with a rolling pin about half of the thickness that I want, maybe about half an inch, and then I'll fold it back onto itself and not like roll it out too much. I'll do the cuts so that it'll have this natural split, and that's really it. This recipe works really well with, like, they don't spread very much, so you can put them pretty close together on a cookie sheet. And I think it's in Fahrenheit 375. I put it on, that's Celsius 190.
Sounds about right from my limited recipe converting.
I think that's probably what I put in there. And they bake for like 10 minutes. It's really fast. You just cool them on a rack, and they're really good. They are a little on the dry side if you eat them dry, but I think that's partly because I adapted them from a cheddar cheese biscuit recipe way back when. And so with no cheese in them, they lose a little moisture. So, but these, they're also easy to veganize because you can put vegan butter and vegan, milk or whatever. It doesn't have any egg in it, which that's when veganizing a recipe gets difficult. So yeah, it's really good. And I ate them with strawberry jam, and yummy. Nice. There is actually other food though. I made the weird green smoothie that
I noticed that the protein shake or whatever it was.
Yeah, healthy green smoothie. I'm not really a smoothie person. Are you?
Not often, no.
No, I don't know what it is about smoothies that I'm not really that into them. But I think maybe part of it is that most of the stuff that goes into smoothies is like berries that have seeds, and I don't like seeds to be in smoothies.
Yeah, I hear you.
But the one that I came up with after like kind of researching what would Steven probably be making, because we don't really know. So I was looking for, okay, what kind of smoothies are like high energy things that you would actually make for someone who is doing intense exercise like she is. And it recommended like this spinach one. I'm like, spinach? That sounds kind of maybe gross, but it was not. But I used spinach, and I put a couple bananas in the freezer. And then the next day they were ready. So I cut up a couple bananas and some spinach. And I believe
what does freezing the bananas do?
It makes it a better texture after it's blended.
Oh, okay.
Because I think otherwise you might have to use ice to make it a better smoothie texture. Otherwise it might be too mushy.
Okay.
But bananas do not have the problem that most other fruits do, in that there are a bunch of seeds left over. They get stuck in my teeth. So, but yeah, it's mostly banana and spinach. And I believe that also has almond milk. And there was, let's see, was it flaxseed? I think I might have put flaxseed in it, like maybe a little spoonful of it, and just mix it up in a blender. I have this blender that's hilariously old. It's from the 70s. So, but it can handle this smoothie. Yeah, I bought like already ground flaxseed so that there wouldn't be seeds. But I use that a lot in like other recipes. When I want to veganize something, I would use flaxseed and water to replace an egg. So now we've come full circle.
Yeah, keep that one in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, the banana, spinach, flaxseed, and almond milk smoothie does not need any sweetening or anything. It's already pretty sweet and it's really good, even for people like me who don't really drink smoothies that much.
Yes.
Yeah. And just to be a little extra, I did do the little fruit slices and juice packet thing. It looks exactly like a Capri Sun. So I bought some Capri Sun and cut up an orange, set that up, put my little toys of the characters around it, pick pictures, it's fun. So Stephen's trying to feed Connie, and my recipes have paid homage to that. So 3 recipes, kind of.
Yeah. 3 foods, 2 songs. It's a pretty intense week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm learning new things all the time.
Well, let's hear some factoids.
Okay. Did you see who the boarders were this time?
I caught it, but I didn't retain it.
Well, we're up to 58 episodes now. I don't expect you to memorize them.
So who did we have this time?
Some people. So Jeff Fu and Joe Johnston were the artists on this one. And they're the ones that always seem to get a lot of this action, so it made sense. They also did Stephen the Sword Fighter, now that I think about it, so they were the logical ones to do this one.
Yeah, well, even though my initial reference to Stephen being the sworn to the sword was off, this is very much a follow-up episode.
Complete with trauma dished out by Hollow Pearl.
Yeah.
And Pearl herself. The description says, Connie trains with Pearl to be a sword fighter.
Yeah, okay. Yep, that's what she does.
We'll take it.
Yep.
And this was the beginning of Stephen Bomb 2. That's a factoid.
Ah.
But I think I've mentioned it.
You said we're coming up to it.
Yeah.
So I guess now we're in it.
1, and it was a 5 episodes, 5 days Stephen Bomb. So it's pretty cool. I think if you've ever seen the book, that Stephen's book about how to talk to people, if you've ever seen the one that it was based on, you would recognize it immediately. But it was clearly how to win friends and influence people. And
Yeah,
Dale
I've heard of that one, yeah, which has been variously lauded and debunked many times over the decades.
Yeah, as a person who's worked at a bookstore, it's like I was incessantly asked for it. So
Yeah, though it's also of a type, even though it is the text, as it were. There are plenty of self-help books along similar lines.
yeah.
Yeah, well, my mother used to just read self-help books. Like, I make it sound like she's slacking off, but no, it used to just be like a thing she liked reading. And being a voracious reader as a child, I would often read them too. So I don't think I've actually read How to Win Friends and Influence People, but I've read books with that goal.
Yeah.
And of the how to talk to people and be confident.
Yeah. I feel like the cover design was very similar too, but self-help books do have this sort of flavor to their cover most of the time too, that they look very similar to each other. And I wonder how much of that is to speak to a social context that they're all expecting, and how much of it is people literally hoping to be mistaken for each other.
Yeah. I suppose by now it might even be, if we're making a book in this genre, this is what people expect it to look like.
Funny. I think I had like a couple more silly things. Like one of the, I don't know if this even counts as a factoid so much as me just joking around about it, but I noticed that in her song, Pearl she pulls out of her gem, she pulls that bandage for Connie. She pulls that out without that huge production she made the last couple of times, which means that she doesn't have to do it, which means that when she did do it, it was just to be dramatic.
Yeah, she's just being extra.
Yes. Oh, Pearl. She's so funny. I mean, unless it was just, she's doing this in the context of a song. She doesn't have time to just stop singing, keep your stance wide. Oh! Good impression. Yes, there were gestures, listeners.
Yeah. Garnet might be your favorite, but you pretty much nailed doing Pearl.
Why, thank you. I do think of the main 3/4, one of them being a boy, voice type wise, I'm definitely more comfortable in Pearl's range. The other thing that I had to say was slightly related to the weird martial arts noise I just made, which is that Connie's training outfit was based on something. Like a lot of people said, she's wearing a Dragon Ball Z outfit, but I heard some other people kind of analyzing it and saying that's actually more likely to be this Indian martial arts style. Now, if I could say it, I'm trying to remember what it was called. It's like 6 syllables, starts with K. It's something like Kalari Payatu, but I probably said it wrong.
Yeah, I don't know it, so I can't correct you or not.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I mean, this was a long time ago. I just looked for some videos of it, and their outfits were so similar to what she's wearing. And then the style was very similar too, although sometimes they had shields, but mostly it was just people beating the hell of each other with swords, and a lot of jumps that were like her jumps. And like the hair, even on some of the people who had long hair, was banded up like that. So the long braid. So I think it's more likely that was the reference rather than, oh, it's Dragon Ball Z, because her heritage is Indian. So that would make sense.
Yeah.
I think that's what they did. But I also have something in my document here that I need to read to you, because Ronaldo updated his blog the day that this was posted. And I got to tell you what he's saying. For months, Keep Beach City Weird has been silent. Silent, but not dead. For I have been toiling away on a super top secret project that will blow the lid off of your perception jar of reality. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., I unleash my masterpiece upon the internet. If I can finish editing it tonight, I'm going to need a lot of soda. Poor Ronaldo.
I know that. I hear you, Ronaldo.
I don't do a good Ronaldo impression, but I do my best.
Ronaldo's weird that I kind of forget what he sounds like while I'm not actually listening to him.
Well, I'm sure he'll be reminded at some point, like tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Well, wait, I have loads more probing questions to ask.
I forgot to do a probing question.
Oh, let's go
I didn't
then.
probe you.
Probe me.
I didn't probe you yet. What should I probe you about? Okay, I actually forgot to talk about this too. We kind of glossed over some aspects of the song, so I'm just going to call this a probing question. So one of the lines that Pearl had in the song, she said to Connie, deep down, you know you weren't built for fighting. And that kind of has a new meaning when you know that gems are literally made, I guess, for a purpose. So like, if you were to analyze that, what do you think she means by that?
I'd say the surface meaning is, Connie, you're not a born warrior, but you're stepping up to the plate, to mix some metaphors there. But she's addressing herself. We don't know quite exactly how it works, but that if gems are made for a purpose, hers is not battling. And so she's actually coming to was probably a big issue for her at the time, that you simply should not be just going around fighting if you're not like warrior class. If you're this would be defective for a Pearl to borrow.
I see.
Yeah, so it's not just I'm Pearl and I've got to learn to fight. It's Pearl and I've got to learn to not be a Pearl, basically. I am taking the jump that Pearls are not the battle strata, which
They sure don't look like it, but
yeah, and the only other one we saw was definitely not a Pearl. So yeah, she's saying not only are you preparing for a life of battle, which is be big if she was talking to a human, you're preparing for a life of not doing what you were literally made to do. And for a gem, a Pearl, that's pretty big news. That's not just like changing jobs.
yeah,
That's-
outside your nature.
Yeah, that's completely leaving, well, not just her comfort zone, supposedly her entire life zone.
That's pretty close to how I interpreted it at the time too. Because, you hear people talk to, humans talking to humans about, oh, you're not built for such and such. Like you'll hear it if maybe you're a dancer, but you're more chunky and all the girls that you dance with are willowy and skinny, and then that's not your body type. You'll be like, oh, well, you're not really built for this. You'll hear people actually say that about your body. But definitely if Pearl is saying it, is not really about your body.
Yeah. And I've also heard it for regular humans, a more general, this just isn't a thing I'm suited to, whether it be body type, skill, personality, whatever.
True. It's true. Yeah. But it definitely has more than the traditional meaning when they're made in a more literal way than we are.
Yeah. In fact, she's probably using no metaphor whatsoever.
Right. And Connie and Pearl are both they're more like willowy body types. They don't look strong. So it kind of fits on both levels there. Like, oh, you might not be a beefy, hardy person, but you can hold your own in a fight if you do what I teach you.
And in Connie's case, not sure how much Pearl would know of this, she's really not been brought up to be a warrior. She's brought up to be a student and a tennis player and someone who doesn't watch medical dramas.
Yeah. So she has a lot of scheduled existence. Like she'll have her studying and she'll have her violin lessons and she'll have her tennis practice and all that stuff. So we know she has at least one athletic aspect, but it's very it's definitely it's not a full contact sport. It's not, some people call it a rich person sport. Like it's almost like golf in some ways, but I used to play, but the people who become professional tennis players, like they have, their bodies look very athletes' bodies to me. So
yeah, and I don't know if Connie's family are rich, but I think it's safe to say they're not poor.
Yeah, typically, especially if one of your parents is a doctor and both parents are working, yeah, she's probably pretty decent. And they got to pay for all those lessons.
Yeah, and the house, they're not exactly living in a rented apartment.
Or a van.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Go check out our merch table.
And that brings us, because we did the food, we did the song, that brings us to merchandise.
It's just my shirt this time.
Yeah, Jam Buds.
I've got my Jam Buds shirt.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I had to take my sweater off to show this to the camera. And it's cute. This is technically like an official shirt, but it is not, officially drawn by one of the artists, obviously. I believe it was in another one of those contests that people submitted designs, and this was one of the ones that won. So it's very cute.
It is. I love it. I'd wear that.
Yeah. So it has Connie and Steven with their instruments and says Jam Buds. And it has little strawberries on either side. It's cute as hell.
Damn right.
And a lot of times I don't end up buying the fan art submission ones, but I have definitely on a few occasions. I just thought, oh, that's really cute, and bought it. I don't know what it is. It's not that I'm like a snob or anything, but just sometimes when things are not quite on model, I'll be less interested in them. So either if they're very on model or they're like really off model, I'll like those more than I will like things that are just close. So,
yeah. Well, that one's deliberately different, I'd say.
Yeah,
in its own weird little painted jam style.
Yeah, definitely. If you can't tell from the way that I'm yawning, I'm definitely I'm getting sleepy all of a sudden.
Well, as am I, having been up till 2 a.m. after Miss Burlesque.
Just looking up the details of the shirt. Yeah, it was a Hot Topic shirt. That's the store that I got it from. Oh, yeah. Yep. But I drank coffee earlier and it was decaf, and you can tell from me yawning. So I guess on that note, anything else we should talk about with Sworn to the Sword?
I think we've covered it. We've really gone a long way into Pearl's psyche and a bit of Connie's as well. And
this is a big episode.
Yeah. Also, it seems so much bigger because everything we'd watched just previously was only about 2 minutes long. This was like an epic.
That's right. We just watched all the shorts and we watched them boom, boom.
So it's like, I have to summarize actual events.
Oh, yeah. Fan reaction wise, being that this is first episode of a Steven bomb, people were really there was a lot of outcry about Pearl over this. Like a lot of people suddenly hated Pearl after this episode because she made Connie feel worthless, or not really so much worthless, like that she should, we just spent the whole episode talking about it, but suddenly Pearl got all these haters from this episode because of how she treated Connie and put her in danger and stuff. So I don't know. It's amazing how quickly people can turn on a character. Yeah. She's a divisive character, even more than she used to be.
Yeah. Well, I guess also her button from going 0 to 100 when it comes to getting dangerous because she's been pushed into one of her Rose issues. She can go pretty sudden.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that's how the first Steven bomb started too, is Pearl freaking out about Rose episode. That was Rose's scabbard started Steven bomb 1. Oh, and that was about a sword too.
Yeah. I don't think we actually saw Rose's sword in this one. It was all violin bows and training swords, apart from a little bit in the title sequence.
Yeah, we might have seen it in the flashback, but it wasn't the real sword. It was a picture of it. Yeah, I think you're right. But,
I guess that would have just sent Pearl even further over the edge.
Yeah.
If Connie had been
What do you-
training with that sword.
Oh, gosh, yeah, I don't even want to think about it at this point. What do you think? If we can assume obviously that Stephen bombs continue because that became a big format for them, but you want to put any virtual fake money that I will never collect on whether the first episode of Stephen Bomb 3 will be about Pearl freaking out about Rose also.
Wouldn't rule it out. Pearl freaking out, I definitely put money on that because that's just a thing that happens.
I'll just go ahead and give you the money. Yeah, but in more...
It was like doing a first season episode where I'd go, oh, I bet this is the one where Stephen learns no lesson whatsoever.
But Stephen Bomb 3 is a bit distant at this point. And at this point, we're looking at the next episode is 59. So should I share the episode title?
Let's hear the episode title and see how soundly I can miss the content.
Odds are good. Next episode is called Rising Tides, Crashing Skies.
Oh, that sounds downright apocalyptic.
Sure does.
But possibly not literally, as we're only a few episodes into the season. That would be a turn to just completely screw over the landscape partway into the season and leave everyone to deal with it for the rest of it.
Oh, my God. You are correct. It would be. You never know with this show, do you? So next time we watch Rising Tides, Crashing Skies.
See y'all then.
You've been listening to Ivy and Daria on Not So Giant Women.
You can find episodes of the show in video form by looking up Not So Giant Women on YouTube
or in audio form at anchor.fm/Not So Giant Women or your podcatcher of choice.
You can also find us on Facebook. Audio production by Daria.
Video production and music by Ivy.
Daria can also be heard on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast.
And Ivy at her Steven Universe fan blog at love-takes-work.tumblr.com.
Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar and remains property of Cartoon Network.
No infringement is intended.
Kalau reported